Venomous Dare coming at you with another NFL video. Let's talk about who made the playoffs, since it is the playoff video as far as the fantasy league goes. Weston won the Cursed Lands division, Jackson won the Division of Death, No Fried won etc., which frankly, this division name is one of many things that needs to be changed about this league next year. Personally, I think that 2 more teams should make the playoffs, and there should be a bye week for the top 2 seeds. This would encourage activity going down the stretch because, as it stands now with just 4 people making it, it's very clear when you're out because oftentimes it becomes a 2-team race of who's going to get the wild card because the divisions will get locked up and become very difficult to win. And of course there's that typical sports situation where even if the supposed division winner does get usurped by a hot second place team, that just means that that team that was presumed the division winner still has a really good record and is now the de facto wildcard team. So a couple more teams make it, couple bye weeks. That's what we do in Jackson's league. I prefer this format because it promotes activity. Another thing that I want to talk about is a trade deadline. Now I think there should be a trade deadline around maybe week 13. I think that it keeps people honest. So with that being said, and considering that Spencer won the wild card, we can jump right into how and why and everything that happened. So last week going in, really the only thing that was still up for grabs was the final wild card. Everything else had been clinched. If Spencer lost and I won, I would win the wild card. Now we can see here that I lost to No Fried by 1 point. The Saints had an off day. The Atlanta Falcons are not extremely good. In fact, they're not very good at all. They're pretty much just a 3rd place team in that joker's little division. Eric Ebron, what can you say about this guy other than he catches touchdowns? I traded Spencer Gronk because Jack Doyle suffered a kidney injury, and Ebron, who was already getting a lot of the red zone looks, became that dude in Indiana. Smith-Schuster has been great this year. Cooks came up flaccid, really hurt me this game, but it doesn't really matter because Weston, he doesn't get to play Lily every week. Sometimes he has to play real competition that start full rosters. This was one of those games. Spencer wins by 10. Josh Allen did about as good as Wentz, despite Wentz just being atrocious for the majority of the Dallas game. And we're going to talk about the Cowboys a bit later, but as of right now, I will just say that if you watch that Dallas game, if you're a Cowboys fan, yeah, it's great. Yeah, we beat Philly, hooray. But you have to look at Dak's performance and say, holy shit, that was so bad. That scared the ever-living shit out of me. That game should have been 35-7. It shouldn't have been close. That was a joke that game went into overtime. Cowboys fans a lot of times can get very high on their horse and sort of think, oh, we got the win. That's all that matters, the W. Well, a lot of times you have to look at how you get the W and if it's sustainable. And when Dak is overthrowing Michael Gallup consistently and costing the team literally 28 points, if you consider the interceptions in the red zone, the fumble, the repulsive overthrows to wide open guys, it really is about 28 points. And it's not just, oh, it's Dak, he throws at people's feet. He's not a rookie anymore. He's a 3rd-year guy, and this is some rookie shit when you're overthrowing guys who have gotten insane separation. Whenever you're throwing into triple coverage, and Amari Cooper might be able to catch it, but you throw it behind him into the safety. That's the sort of shit that can't fly, and when the Cowboys do limp into the playoffs out of a soft division and get knocked out early from the playoffs, people are going to sit there and they're going to lose their shit, and they're all going to just fall down on Dak like a stack of bricks and say, oh, what happened? How did we get in this place? We were so good. The defense was so good. Defense isn't going to be able to carry you against top-tier teams. There have been a lot of moves and rule changes in the NFL that make defense less of a part of the game, and it's not completely obsolete. But when you go up against these top-tier offenses like the Rams, it's harder to rely on defense than it was 10 to 15 years ago, much less 30 years ago. I think that's what people forget, is people want to sort of trot out this, oh yeah, well it shouldn't be like 1980 anymore. Well, that's not what we want. We want like 2005, like Ray Lewis, the jacked up segment. People are tired of this. Zeke Elliott getting fined for lowering his head. And then you can see the DB himself was lowering his head and pretty much just going for the knees. And you sort of sit there and think to yourself, if every defensive player is going to go low, then on some level, lowering your shoulder is one of the ways that you can protect your knees. And the NFL just says, well, he lowered his head, we got to find someone, and what better person to do it than a cowboy, one of Jerry's boys that we can sort of sit here and act like is a domestic abuser because we suspended him for 6 games. So we're not going to talk about the Cowboys later because I just talked about him. Anyway, Weston comes up soft here. He's been incredibly lucky this year. He's been good. I mean, it's still Weston. He still managed well. He did the things that was necessary to keep him going. He managed his bench well. But at the end of the day, you have to acknowledge things like his points against. He was the last person to reach 1,000 points scored against. I'm not going to go week by week and point out every little time he got lucky. Maybe I'll do that if he wins the Super Bowl like he seems to do every time he makes the playoffs. But with that being said, both of these teams are making the playoffs and looking strong. Spencer has Gronk when Gronk is looking like Gronk. He has Brown, who is widely considered to be the best receiver in the league. Of course, the days of Megatron are long gone, and Odell Beckham has Eli Manning throwing to him. Now, the Giants do look pretty solid, and they have sort of stepped up their game and realized that they can use Saquon Barkley and Eli in a conservative role and win games, but frankly, it's too late. Anyone predicting them to make the playoffs is a cretin. These are the sort of people who tell you the Browns are going to win 9 games every year. Oh, this is the year for the Browns. And granted, if your expectations for the Browns is for them not to be dog shit, then yeah, this is the year. This is the year they're not a laughingstock. Congrats. But people who make that prediction have made that prediction for the last 3 years. It sort of reminds me of Ben's "the Mariners are going to make the playoffs" prediction. If you make the same prediction every year, it doesn't really make it impressive when your prediction finally hits. So I think that's worth noting, and the Mariners, of course, are tearing it down this year. I wonder if Ben will predict them to make the playoffs again. Anywho, back to football. Gus Edwards, who everyone was really hurting their neck to suck off deep, has been sort of disappointing the last 2 weeks, hasn't found the end zone. This has a little bit to do with the Lamar Jackson situation in Baltimore. They're finding weird ways to put it in the end zone for that team. Of course, Lamar Jackson came up with an injury at the end of last week, so that'll be interesting. Baltimore is sort of a fringe team. Spencer relies on Thielen and Keenan Allen, who are both pretty damn consistent, as well as Brown. I think he pretty much slots those guys in for about 40 to 50 every week, and that's the strategy he's going for. The new guys, Kellerman's, both of them missed the playoffs. Sam looked pretty scary here with McCaffrey, but of course he had the Kareem Hunt issue happen, and the wheels completely came off. Although it's worth noting the wheels were off sort of before that, you know. It's not like he was going to make it and then the last week he just missed it. No, he was out of it the week before. Mahomes is where the heart is. This is another team like me, like the new guys who were 8-6. A solid, not quite, oh, we made the playoffs, but it was, we had good years, we managed okay, you know, we managed well enough to have winning records. It's sort of a blanket statement to say that 3 managers managed well, but, you know, 8-6, all 3 of us were sort of in the mix around the last 4 weeks. We were sort of in there. I know I was leading the division for a long time. And then AJ Green got hurt. Anyway, Patrick Mahomes. Well, what can you say about Mahomes other than that he's been God tier and he's flourished under Andy Reid? You gotta love that. Josh Howard, Tyreek Cohen. To me, this has been sort of saying, I'm too much of a pussy to trade either one of these guys. I don't want to pick one. I'll start them both. Now, on some level, they've both been about average, so you can't really fault them. But I think if you're Ben, one of the ways that you make the playoffs this year is you try to move one of these guys. Josh Gordon, one of Ben's favorite players, everyone just lines up to suck this guy off when he gets unsuspended. I mean, people act like he's Randy Moss reincarnated and just, oh, he can't, as Stephen A would say, he can't lay off the weed, and if only he was unsuspended, he would be legendary. He's been decent, you know, he hasn't been legendary, but he's been a solid option. And for a Patriot, a team that, you know, you can't really rely on for guys to get looks, he hasn't had many stinker weeks. We see he's gotten less than 5 a few times. I don't really count the initial game versus Miami because that was his first week. He's been decent though, and for Ben, a solid pickup. But really, Ben's team is all built around Tyreek Hill and Patrick Mahomes, the discount double points. And whenever you have a player who is ranked number 1 and is having an MVP tier season, a lot of times that is really all you need to get you at least a handful of wins. And obviously, if you can have the guy's favorite target who's having the MVP season, you're going to be able to ride that. And that's what Ben did. Remember, Ben had Le'Veon Bell. Ben was relying on Le'Veon Bell to be his running back 1. Of course, Bell never played a snap. Hold on one second. These are the moments where I wish I had a co-host. So finishing my thought, Ben was all about Mahomes, and just imagine if instead of picking Bell, he had gotten his hands on another top-tier guy, a top-tier running back that is. And you might be saying, well, what do you mean by top-tier guy? It's pretty obvious that Bell isn't top-tier. I mean, he never played a snap. And what I mean by that is guys that were perceived as top tier going into the year. Looking at Jackson's team, it only puts up 87 points. This is a team that has a big hole with the health of James Conner being in question. This was a hole that he also had in his other league that he plays with me, in which I defeated him in the first round of the playoffs in this last week. You might be saying, playoffs? Talking about playoffs? Yeah, because the teams who are the 1 and 2 seed and deserve it get a bye week. And since more than one wildcard team makes it in, you don't have people like Seagouch who want to hang themselves after week 6. Whereas Seagouch is a guy who would actually be active and continue to be active. Not that he was inactive, but he would really try and really keep trying to win if there were more wildcard seats. And maybe you can even look at a person like Lily. Maybe Lily was so horrifically inactive this year because she went, 0-5, and literally was like, well, I'm fucked mathematically, like I can't make it. But I don't want to beat a dead horse. It's just a big deal. You look at a team, you look at Ben's team, you look at Sam's team, you look at my team. All of them had flaws, and all of them had things that happened to them that really prevented them from making the playoffs. AJ Green injury, Kareem Hunt suspension, Le'Veon Bell never playing a snap. These are the differences between a couple wins. And not to say that any of these 3 teams are better than any of the teams that make the playoffs, but as it stands, as far as who makes the playoffs, 6 is way better than 4, in my opinion, and I think it promotes activity. And I ain't just saying that because I missed the playoffs. So let's move on to the current week, and the games are going. I wanted to get this video out. I didn't want to not do the video just because the games have started, and they've just begun. So let's not even talk about this. Who gives a shit? Stephen A. Race versus Garuden's Grinders. So this is a classic rivalry matchup. This is a best of 3. Jackson took the first game, really told Spencer he was easy. Spencer said, look, I'm coming back in the week where we play each other near the end. You have Gurley out. It's going to be an auto win. Spencer did deliver on that auto win promise, unlike when he said that against me when I had about 7 players out and I took it from him with the 104 points. But anyway, Spencer's playing against Jackson here. Jackson's got Rapelessberger, who had a injury designation a couple days ago. He's fine now. He's playing New England, not in New England, thankfully, because it'll be cold as fuck up there. Rapelessberger will do well. Jared Goff, soft-ass Philly at home, he'll do well too. I think I'm going to actually edge Rapelessberger because his team needs the wins a little bit more for the standings, I believe. Todd Gurley, what can you say about this guy? I mean, everyone thought he was going to be amazing. He has been amazing, and he's been the cornerstone of Jackson's team. Gotta love him. Phillip Lindsay came up soft. Now, this is a guy who Spencer, whenever him and I were sort of discussing, okay, I need running back help because A.J. Green is out. T.J. Yeldon has really been a victim of Jacksonville being a joke. And I'm in a position where Gio Bernard isn't doing anything because Joe Mixon has actually remained healthy. I need help. And Spencer was, oh, do you want Gus Edwards? Fuck Gus Edwards. So Phillip Lindsay was the one guy he considered untouchable. Well, that really sucks penis for him because Phillip Lindsay put up 4 points for him against Cleveland. And Denver lost. If you're Denver, you've got to be sitting here saying, what the hell went wrong? I mean, I know we lost Peyton Manning, but Jesus, we can't even, can't even go 9-7. It's pretty bad. Huge blow for Spencer because Spencer really is relying on Phillip Lindsay to do well for him. He's got old McGuire here on his bench. He also has Eckler on his bench, and unfortunately for Eckler, he had that phenomenal week where Melvin Gordon was out and he got a lot of touches. He had a good week and a great week. Well, he got concussed, and Melvin Gordon's back, so that sucks a big one for Spence. Nick Chubb, 100 beautiful yards, already put up 10 points. That's about what you want from a running back, average on average. Spencer's got Jalen Samuels. And it looks like Connor's not going to start. So this is a great swing for Spencer. All year, I'm sure, when I say I'm sure, I mean everyone knows this. Spencer has not been happy about the fact that Jackson's benefited from Connor. So this will be a great test. The tables have turned. Jackson doesn't have Connor, and furthermore, Spencer basically has Connored Jackson with Samuels here. You like that play on word, how Connored is sort of like countered? It's pretty phenomenal. It'll be pretty funny if Samuels and Lindsay combine for less than 10 and it costs Spencer the game. I mean, that would just be crushing for Spencer. Woods and Cooks have pretty much just been like the same player. Talented receivers on a very powerful Rams attack. I think as the year has went on, people have sort of come to the conclusion that Sean McVay is actually a worse offensive thinker than Andy Reid. Or at least, maybe not that, but that the Chiefs' offense is better than the Rams' offense. That's sort of the conclusion I've come to. Jared Goff has had more off weeks and has been tested less than Pat Mahomes. I also think Andy Reid is more creative and has more bags of tricks, but I also think Andy Reid is a playoff choker. And inevitably, when the Chiefs choke in the playoffs, you're going to hear their fans say, especially all the new fans who really, really have a hard-on for Mahomes and didn't give a shit about the team 3 or 4 years ago, they're going to tell you the only reason they lost is because of the Hunt suspension. And I'm here to tell you that the Chiefs are going to choke. It has nothing to do with Hunt when they do choke, so remember that, Chiefs Nation. Jared Cook has been great, although Gronk has finally found his form. I'm going to edge Gronk here. Keenan Allen versus Adams. I always forget this guy's fucking first name, but it's Mr. Touchdown Devontae. Okay, yeah, thanks. Devontae is extremely talented. Yeah, I gave him the edge over Allen, Keepo. Yeah, 0. Sorry about you, Spence. Queefin Allen always gets hurt. Oops. Looks like he got hurt when it mattered most. How's the goose egg? Oh. So Spencer's at a tremendous disadvantage. You know, you draft soft-ass Keenan Allen and he's solid, but he gets hurt every year. Sometimes you take it shithole like this. Look at these projections. Holy shit. Well, with both Lindsey and Allen underperforming, it might be good night for Spencer, who's really good at making the playoffs and really bad at winning in the playoffs. And I know Spencer, I think, has 3 teams he really wants to beat, whether this is playoffs or regular season. Me, the Cousin Bowl, obviously he thinks he's better than me. He has a better overall record than me, and I beat him with virtually none of my good players this year. Missed the playoffs, though, and he beat me for the wild card, so he has that going for him. But it looks like that will be the last meaningful victory he has this year, because if you look across the board, he is at an almost insurmountable disadvantage here. Really, I mean, Goff could go off. Maybe Goff could get 35 or something, and that would get him back in. But as it stands, Jackson has solid, consistent points on the board already, with the Chargers running back, Jackson, as well as Chubb. Now, I like to point out that Justin Jackson, of course, is Eckler's replacement, and Samuels is, of course, Connor's replacement. So both of these guys are sort of taking each other's bench replacements. This is the sign of owner activity, and I love to see this. Holy mother of God. Mike Williams got 3 touchdowns on Jackson's bench. That sucks. Alrighty, so obviously Jackson's hugely favored in this. Brutal, brutal Thursday night for Spencer. I mean, that's like a death nail. One Johnny Football and no Fried. Weston makes the playoffs less than you would expect, but when he makes them, he wins. Starting Josh Allen again versus soft-ass Detroit. Allen has been a running threat this year. I was sort of wondering why the hell Weston was starting Josh Allen. It's because the dude's got wheels. Same with Russell Wilson. Everyone knows that. Russell Wilson used to be like the best fantasy quarterback because he ran so much. Sort of that Cam Newton effect where it was like he's not even a top 15 thrower, but because of the way that rushing yards are weighted, okay, yeah, he's actually really good. He's facing San Fran. I actually give Russell Wilson the edge. Seattle's been phenomenal. It looks like they're going to easily topple Carolina for that NFC wildcard spot. Carolina might fucking finish with a losing record. They've been bleeding so badly. Leonard Fournette, he's been great. He's been back. TJ Yeldon, 0 value. Frank Gore, 0 value. I mean, as long as Fournette's healthy, he's been great. And that's sort of been the story of his career. If you're going to gamble on that, it's boom or bust. And for Weston, I expect it to boom this week because LeGarrette Blount Blowen, he's not very good. And when I say he's not very good, he's broken Tim 3 times this year. He's playing on an offense that is pretty much like a Texas Tech style spread offense where they throw a lot. Now I know it's not literally spread. I was just making an analogy. Adam Jones, this guy has been extremely productive despite Green Bay just losing and losing and losing. Their coach being fired, Aaron Rodgers sort of being bratty, and it's sort of becoming real Hollywood and feeling like, oh well, I might be playing up in Green Bay, but I feel like I'm playing in LA. Dating Danica Patrick. His family feels disconnected from him is what they've said, and it seems like he's being a little bitch. And there's really one thing you can count on with Aaron Rodgers. He's going to throw touchdowns to Adams. He's going to put up regular season numbers when he's healthy. And the mainstream media is going to suck him off and act like he's the best quarterback ever. I also want to point out the Jags. Saxonville, ranked 23. Now this, of course, was a heralded defense last year. They were very good. They had a lot of fantasy points. And they actually did some damage in the playoffs, losing to the Pats. And they had a very good first half versus the Pats. And then Blake Bortles happened. And when I say Blake Bortles happened, what I really mean is reality happened. Because Blake Bortles was always Blake Bortles. And the Jacksonville Jaguars were always sort of a gimmicky one-note team with the shitty quarterback. They were never that good. They play in one of the softest divisions in football. This is a division who the top 2 teams, the Colts and the Texans, pretty much always have severe injury troubles. And this year they don't. And what do you know? They're actually both okay. But whenever J.J. Watt's hurt, Andrew Luck's hurt, wow, they're pretty soft. And Jacksonville, really, thought a lot of themselves last year. A lot of people were sucking them off deep. And we sort of see how they really are this year. Jacksonville, Jalen Ramsey, this is your actual level. Last year was an anomaly. Although against Washington, they're going to do well. After I say all of that, they are playing Washington. Who is Washington starting Mark Sanchez? I know Colt McCoy was having some injury trouble. Doesn't really matter. They're not going to do well. Harrison Butker only managed 4 points. This is disappointing. Now, Butker is one of these guys on a high-powered offense, and he can sort of have these weeks where the Chiefs will score like 7 touchdowns and never have to kick a field goal, and he doesn't actually get that many fantasy points. A lot of times you can sit there and ask yourself, well, what would be better fantasy-wise, to have field goals or, be in an offense where teams stall out in the red zone and don't score as much? Then the kicker will get field goals. Maybe he's a better kicker. Or have a guy like Butker who's on like the best offense in the league and is just going to guarantee have at least 6 different opportunities to line up in some capacity. But anyway, Butker is definitely one of those guys who will turn in weeks like this where, okay, he was nailing them, but they were all PATs. Michael Thomas has been a guy who is very, very good. To me, him and Adams are both the standout guys in the offenses that pretty much everyone knows. They spread it around a lot, but they are the keynote guys in those offenses. DJ Moore for No Fried. This is sort of a desperation start. He's had some great weeks for Carolina, but Carolina has really been faltering. I don't really like this pick that much. Julio Jones has been God tier, and I actually expect him to outperform Michael Thomas against Arizona. Adam Jones, I've already spoken about him, but it can't really be understated how much better he is than Doug Martin, who is playing for a horrifically bad Oakland team. Martin's been okay in the last few weeks, but he's still Dougie Martin. Overall, I give Weston the edge here, and I think he's going to take down No Fried. And we'll just briefly touch on this because it's an old rivalry game and both the teams have winning records. Drew Brees and Ingram facing off against Carolina. My God, they better have at least 50. I mean, this is a Panther team just bleeding. We can see David Johnson has already punched it in against a soft-ass Atlanta defense. David Johnson's been so inconsistent. He absolutely hamstrung me a couple weeks ago when he got 2 of his turnovers hawked by some shitty guy that essentially just came in and put it in his pooper once. So loud for no reason. Coleman's been disappointing, even though DeVote's been hurt. That's because Atlanta's going to have a losing record. Maher has been solid in lieu of Dan Bailey. People were sort of predicting that would be a huge deal, and it hasn't been. Like I said, Ebron's been great. You can't really stop talking about how great that he's been this year, especially at getting touchdowns. Cooks has been solid. He's been around like rank 12, rank 11 all year. Smith-Schuster, same deal, although he's prone to have these really great weeks. Overall, this team is about one more consistent piece about being playoff worthy. Maybe, like AJ Green. I could have been more active. I was holding on to guys like Ivory too long and the Bengals' Gio Bernard. Sort of hoping that those situations, their guys would get injured. Joe Mixon has an injury history. Shady McCoy had things hanging over his head all season. He had a few injuries. And whenever Nathan Peterman was gotten rid of, the Bills actually looked serviceable for a couple weeks. But anyway, this is a solid team for me this year, but just not one that can make it to the playoffs. Not in a 4-team playoff league, at least. And, I think it's also worth noting that Spencer makes the playoffs every year. That's for a reason. He's a very good owner. But he doesn't have the best playoff success. And if we instituted a system where the 1 and 2 seed got buys, that would actually make it where the very best owners would be put in situations where they would actually do better in the playoffs, because a bye is literally immunity. and that's how people should view it, is it just gives you immunity for one round. And I feel like a lot of the best owners might be saying, well, it makes it harder for me if more teams make the playoffs because I make the playoffs every year. But you have to consider that bye factor. So Mahomes is where the heart is. He has Mack, is Marlon Mack, right? Yep, Marlon Mack. When this guy plays, he's fucking amazing. He punches it in a lot. He's part of an Indiana offense that is for once somewhat balanced. They're not asking Luck to throw it 55 times behind no O-line. The crappy tight end Ben started, got him 5. Tyreek Hill had an off week with 4. Mahomes played a Chargers team that upset him, and he was decent, but he didn't light up the scoreboard as usual. Josh Howard and Cohen, these are two guys that Ben is starting because they're going to both get around 8+ every week. I've already spoken about Howard, and I'm not doing that with my mouse. It's because someone has scored. Overall, obviously, Ben has way more points than me now. We're about predicted to tie. Between Breeze and Ingram playing a soft Carolina team, I do expect myself to win. Although this is one thing about doing the matchup preview on Sunday morning. Okay, his kicker's already gotten him 19. The running back's already punched in once, and it's the second quarter of the Dallas game. His running back 1 has already punched in once. Ben has already put up 71. So a sane person might say, like, well, clearly he has the advantage. And frankly, like, he's doing very well, and he might have the edge overall, but going into this matchup, I was giving myself the advantage. So if you like that, make sure to like, comment, subscribe for more.